Good afternoon, and welcome to the Houston Museum of African American Culture. My name is Christopher Blay. I'm the chief curator here at the museum. Today, we'll be having a conversation with the man to my right. But before I make a proper introduction, I want to first say thank you for showing up on a Saturday afternoon on a hot Texas, Houston afternoon. I would like to introduce you to the artist Franco Lee II. We are sitting in, there's some seats up here if you'd like to pull up, and we'll get even more as you come in, so thank you. The exhibition is entitled Franco Lee II Mid-Career Survey. And this mid-career point in Franco's illustrious career is where we kind of take stock of what's happened in his work so far. It's kind of an introduction from the early days of his work to the present day, and there are a couple of pieces in the show that were completed this year. So it is a great 20-year survey of Franco's work. And I'll read you a brief description, kind of a biography and artist statement about Franco. He represents a generation of new and emerging voices from Houston's burgeoning art community. He is a product of the University of Houston studio programs. He embodies a rare combination of formalist painter and urban griot. His flat, colorful canvases are frozen moments of pop culture, stories, excerpts, both fictional and real. These themes usually consist of hip-hop subculture, street aesthetics, politics, sports, and social issues, juxtaposed with a fantasy visual aesthetic. His painterly tales depict critical junctures where life is celebrated, or conversely, where the moral and ethical fibers of society begin to tear. These narratives provide an honest assessment of violence that continues to infuse everyday rap culture and the spectacle that is apparently cultivated through the modern media. The boldness of the colors in his paintings reflect the emotional outbursts he depicts. Franco's work has been part of a lot of museum exhibitions, including the traveling exhibition titled The Dirty South, curated by Houston's own Valerie Cassell Oliver. It was most recently at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Denver. It traveled from the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts back in 2022 to here in Houston in 22. His work was previously at the Contemporary Arts Museum Houston as part of the Slowed and Throwed exhibition. That was an homage to the artist DJ Screw. Mystic Lions, the list goes on and on. But we will, all of those facts are easily accessible online, and we really want to just get into the heart of this exhibition and get into the heart of what Franco's work is about. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Franco Lee II.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for the awesome introduction. I appreciate that, Chris, and all of the great treatment I've been getting here at HMAAC, and it's been one of the best solo shows I've ever had.
Well,
definitely.
We are particularly proud to be the first museum that has recognized this very underrated artist
Thank you.
and presenting a full spectrum of your work so far. As we mentioned earlier, your work has been a part of a lot of museum exhibitions, but this is the first time you can see all your work the bulk of all the bodies of works that you've created over the past 20 years. And when you get signed by the Gagosian or one of those other fancy places, we'll be proud to know that we recognize that this body of work needed the attention that it has gotten here at the museum. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, I want to dive right into it. The show is broken up into like 4 major themes. Downstairs, there's a room right to the right of our entry area that focuses on a really traumatic experience for the country. It was the killing of a man in Jasper, Texas, named James Byrd. And then in the larger gallery downstairs, we have images that depict sports celebrities, a lot of Black athletes, and kind of the juxtaposition of the violence of contact sports and the spectacle of the Black artist, and then or Black athlete. And then up here, where we're sitting now, these 2 galleries, the gallery directly across from us and here, are dedicated to your paintings of DJ Screw and a kind of a reflection of the state of hip hop, if you will. So the thing that I want to ask you first is about this painting behind us.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a rich tapestry of funeral scene. There's it's titled DJ Screw in Heaven, right?
DJ Screw in Heaven 2. This is the second.
Tell us a little bit about what we're looking at.
Well, it's basically a montage of DJ Screw's progression from selling tapes out of his house to opening up his store on Cullen, moving to Missouri City, once the store got rolling. Also juxtaposing that idea is his Impala being a factory Black Impala and upgrading it to the candy blue Impala that he drove. Screw Blue is what they called it. Alongside of that is the progression of the gray tapes to the clear tapes, which I play a lot off of, and pretty much all of my Screw pieces, for the most part, I try and show that transition from gray to clear to CD, or just his music catalog, how it changed.
So yeah, there are at least 5 to 7 paintings that depict DJ Screw in this exhibition. Who is DJ Screw to you? And what, for someone that is sitting in the audience that doesn't even know who DJ Screw is, what can you tell us about DJ Screw, and why is he the subject of so many of your paintings?
I feel like DJ Screw was a guru as far as disc jockeys, like a Yoda, like a Gandhi or Wise man, as far as disc jockeys and DJs go, and being as innovative as he was to come up with his own sound that influenced like a whole music industry from then to this day on, and touched people internationally. He just major unsung hero in my time as being an artist that I felt like needed to be uplifted and shown in the fine art realm.
Yeah. Okay, so I was having this conversation just 2 nights ago. I went to a show here in Houston, and it was the Killer Mike tour. So Michael Render, aka Killer Mike, had a concert here in Houston, and the conversation I was having afterwards was about violence in hip hop. And I feel that hip hop has this sort of undue burden of being sort of the poster art form for criticism of violence in America. So not to make you the spokesperson for hip hop, I want to talk to you a little bit about how the depiction of hip hop celebrities in your work, and really how you explore the themes of violence in your work, and why. Like, what is your approach to understanding hip hop through the lens of like violence in America?
Basically, I use my work as a mirror to reflect what, you know, generations to come or the current generations aren't really seeing about themselves as far as violence goes, and desensitization to violence. And I just, whether that imagery evokes like, anger, laughter, or just self-reflection, I just want some kind of emotion to be felt when looking at yourself or what your peers or your generation is doing. And it kind of serves, my paintings, I would feel, serve as like hieroglyphics for years to come of like what was going on.
Yeah, speaking of hieroglyphics, if you look to my right, there are a couple of paintings that have this kind of progression from, like the one that I'm looking at right now, there's a depiction of African warriors that sort of transform into like a scene on a urban, like a contemporary street. And the same thing is happening in the painting to the right of it. Two things. You use, they're recurring people, identifiable people in your paintings. Michael Jordan, the boxer Jack Johnson, DJ Screw, and Tupac. So talk to me a little about that.
Well, this one is called Zulu Thug. At the time, I just really wanted to make that comparison of the Zulu warriors and tribes, and, along with gang culture not being that much of a difference in, community, and just maybe the wrong cause, but, just showing that comparison and juxtaposition of like the warrior to the street thug or to the street hustler or whatnot, and as well as the rappers. It's a lot of rappers in there too. It's Eazy-E, Screw is in there, Jam Master Jay, ODB, Old Dirty Bastard, Mac Dre, Fat Pat is in there, Biggie's in there. Some other unsung heroes that some people may or may not know, but
yeah. There's a series of paintings downstairs, and I invite you to please walk through the exhibition if you haven't already. There are about 62 paintings here, and a series of drawings from your early, like sort of right after high school. Which leads me to the question about how you see your work progressing from that time, like just getting into paintings and drawings and to this present moment.
Well, I knew at the time, whatever I was doing in the drawings, ballpoint pen, ink, anything I could get my hands on as far as like office supplies and materials, I was going to bring that same approach to the painting, or the paintings, being like what a buddy of mine called speedballing, which is like outlining in a fluid black paint with a fine outliner brush. And so I knew with those kind of illustrative graphic novel drawings, I was going to carry the same thing into the paintings. And you can kind of see me outlining everything or like re-outlining, re-establishing
Yeah.
the boundaries of things where, you know, you start to get these negative and positive spaces that turn into like little paintings inside of the big painting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking at those early drawings is kind of like a good indication of your ability to make drawings and paintings. But there's something unique about your style of painting that creates this kind of like flat perspective. It's you know, everything seems to be like on the same plane. And I know that that's intentional, but like how did you begin to like flatten the plane of your paintings, and how, like, tell me about your connection to that kind of style of painting.
Really learning as I go, teaching myself to paint on the fly, which coincides with like coloring in a coloring book. Like, you know, the boundary lines in the coloring book, you're just filling that in, and eventually I would start blending the three tones, light, mid-range, and dark, and, you know, kind of start doing that inside the boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the whole progression of the flatness. And some things I keep, some things I want to develop more, and some things I don't necessarily have enough time to go full in on, but just only develop the focal point. So, I mean, it's just mistakes and and good things that appear, you know, and I just let it be.
Yeah, I was talking with someone about these paintings, and one of the things, like, you see it really clearly in this painting. It's this sort of like hovering perspective, and you see that in some of the paintings downstairs as well, where it looks like you're viewing the entire plane from above. And I know you play a lot of video games,
Mm-hmm.
so I see that sort of video game perspective both in these kinds of perspectives, but also in the subject of your paintings. Like, you literally have there's a painting downstairs. I think it's the painting with Jack Johnson and Michael Jordan and LeBron James, but in the middle section there's a figure playing video games, and then there's like this exploding sort of bank robbery or something happening in there. So do you see is there a connection between your sort of love for video games and these kinds of perspectives?
Well, yeah, there's definitely the initial inspiration from video games, like, because even before I was diving into color, you know, I was viewing that color and stuff in video games. But I'd have to say, with each piece, I call myself like challenging myself with the perspective, like a perspective that I never tried. You know, as I was building up my body of work, each piece I wanted to do something different that I hadn't tried before, and you know, and I'm still doing that as I go. You know, just figuring out some kind of angle or viewpoint that is different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You are a very prolific painter. When we did our studio visit, this is a selection of all the paintings that are present. And this doesn't include the paintings that are in private collections and paintings that, are in exhibitions currently outside of Houston. And I know you're a full-time painting professor.
I will be this semester.
You will be this semester.
Yeah.
Like, what is your studio process and practice? Like, how do you find the time to do?
Multitasking. For one, I can't really sit still and focus on like a TV series or a movie or anything like that. I have to like just keep running the TV series or movie and repeat it. So with that being said, I'm not really sitting still much. I have paintings like set up all around the studio, or and just jump from painting to painting depending on what paint's available on the palette. You know, what's already out and ready to go. And as you can see, my palette kind of is cohesive, and you'll see some of the same colors in different pieces. And so I'm able to jump around from painting to painting and work on whatever's closest to a deadline, work on what, you know, maybe might sell or whatnot. I'll focus in and harness down and, you know, grind it out. But for the time being, I'm just being real loose and fluid and putting paint where it's needed based off the palette of what I'm already working on.
Yeah. And one of the things that I experienced putting this exhibition together with El Franco is that he's such a perfectionist. Even as we were preparing to get the paintings in here, he was pulling a couple back and saying, "Oh, I feel like I need to finish this. This is not quite finished." So it's like this this kind of kinetic, like, drive that just keeps happening. But are you thinking consciously about, like, as you're creating new paintings and working in your studio all these hours, are you constantly thinking about, like, subject matter, or are you just sort of like, you start a painting and, like, tell me about that process?
I'm working from a list for the most part. I always have kept a list that I check off subject matters, ideas, titles for paintings, and it's according to what canvas I have in inventory. You know, I'll base how important that title is, and you know what size canvas it needs to be represented on. So I'm constant. It's just an ongoing life list that I've been working on from 2002, 2003 of what I've been wanting to see.
Yeah. Speaking of that, and this is a revelation to me. I didn't know you were working from a list. But clearly, some of the things on that list include just this heavy concentration on sports figures, especially basketball players. But the way that I read it is this idea of how you're putting Black athletes in the same space as the victims of state violence against Black people, because on this, it's like this sort of like, there's consumption of the figures of the celebrities, but then there's like this kind of there's seems to be the value that's placed on the athletes is not equal to the value that's placed on the lives of people that look like them. So I see it as like you're critiquing this idea of like the Black athlete or the Black celebrity, and saying that there's some value there for the people that are consuming that athlete, like literally, and then, but there's not the same value on the lives of the communities that they come from, or the people that look like them.
Definitely, you hit it on the nail. With that being said, I'm able to kind of combine both worlds in some paintings, dealing with the athlete and current injustices. Kind of like the red, white, black, and blue painting down there that I have with Arthur Ashe, Michael Jordan, Floyd Mayweather. Then I have James Byrd being drugged through that painting, chained to the truck. And also kind of throwing in the aspect of the Black animal, gorilla, Black Panther, the workhorse, the Clydesdale, all of that plays into, that same kind of comparison of the sports and the injustices from.
Yeah, I mean, I see it, there are times that it's the concept of violence is never too removed from your paintings, whether it's like a depiction of hip hop beef, like in that painting where there's like a fight based on whatever problems these two performers had with each other, or whether it's like you're describing there's a scene where the basketball fights, like the infamous brawls that happen on the basketball court are parts of that, but it just seems like it's never too far. But I don't see it as even these separate things, because there's an inherent violence in the contact sports that we consume. Like, I love football, but it's the craziest, like, horrible, dangerous thing you can do to your body and your brain. I love basketball, but when you have people throwing elbows and like heated competition, there's like physical contact that is inherently a part of that. And the video games that are part of the top video producers are full of that kind of confrontation of violence. And then we don't have to step too far out of these worlds of entertainment and fantasy to the news in the headlines about the kinds of violence that are happening in our society. So do you are you like, is that connection present with you as you're making these paintings? And do you find, like, talk to me about it?
Well, definitely being a boxing fan, combat sports fan, but boxing first and foremost, I see the beauty in fights, even down to the street level, fights you see people posting on social media or the internet. Well, with action, I find it's easier to storytell, and guide the viewer's eye across the canvas with, those action scenes. And I'm just basically telling the story with the figure, but also just bringing that mirror back into play of like how, violent society is and mankind is as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of hip hop, and there's a lot of conversation around that kind of violence. But my perspective on it is that we're really scapegoating hip hop, because it's not the whatever arguments you can make for violence in hip hop or misogyny in hip hop, or steering the youth in a wrong direction. These are truly reflections of the society that we live in and the times that we live in. It's not, I don't see it as glorifying it, but I can see the argument for less of that kind of content. Do you have those kinds of conversations with yourself as you're making these paintings that are like hip hop adjacent, at the same time that you're making paintings about the kinds of state's violence against Black people?
I definitely want to stick to that subject matter, but it's so in your face now with like cell phones and people sharing, content, that it doesn't have the same shock value, I have to say, in paintings. But yeah, there aren't too many people doing what I'm doing as far as the violence in their work. So I'll just keep chipping away at it. I mean, and that's just one small section of subject matter that I deal with. I have a lot.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, and the history of depiction of violence in art is a long history. So there, in that regard, it's not something um, you know it's not something new. We've seen it across generations and across centuries. Um, but I want to talk about those. There's the room downstairs. It doesn't have a disclaimer, but there is a curtain just so that you're not blindsided as you walk into this room. That there are about 8 paintings, and the majority of which depict in very graphic detail the killing of James Byrd. Can you tell me a little bit about that story and how you arrived at making those paintings?
Well, definitely from my dad's side of the family, there's Jasper relatives.
Texas?
Yeah, we have uh, family cemetery off Huff Creek, where his remains were like kind of scattered. His torso was left in front of that cemetery. I think his head was left at a church nearby that has something to do with the cemetery, and various other body parts. At the time, that was 1998. So my uncle, still being like off the radar as far as like jumping headfirst into any kind of violence towards family. He was a Black Panther in Chicago. Bob Lee.
Bob Lee. Okay.
Yeah. So just seeing his urgency to get down to Jasper when that happened, and taking his shotgun down there just on his own, and him making work dealing with his collage medium, it just inspired me to make my first painting, a James Byrd painting, and I've done about 8 of them.
Which one was the first one?
The first one's in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, with a collector named Ben Jeffers, a close family of the friend. But he bought a drawing that I did of the same painting, and I didn't get it documented, this first painting, but I have some, home photographs of it. I don't have a professional photograph, but it was kind of a aerial view as well, like you were looking from the truck, and as well, what the guys that were dragging him would be seeing from the truck.
Yeah.
So it had that perspective. They were looking at him.
And you're not I mean, these aren't paintings based on photographs or like video. So you're like,
Right.
What are you doing? Are you listening to accounts of what happened and like imagining what it must have been like?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely visualizing what it would have been like. Didn't know what he was wearing at the time, so I just made up an outfit or a uniform that I used consecutively in the other pieces, and just wanted to make him an unsung hero, just like I would with Screw or with Jack Johnson or anyone else in my paintings. But just painting straight from my imagination. There was, and kind of found a niche from that point on of like, I want to paint things that weren't caught on video, things you would have to imagine, and things, of course, you wouldn't see someone actually paint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, those paintings are really difficult to look at, even for someone who admires your work like I do.
Thank you.
And I felt that it was important to have them in the exhibition, with the argument that Emmett Till's mother made to have an open casket
Mm.
at his funeral, because it feels like, as you said, there's kind of a desensitization to violence in the everyday. I mean, we see it on TV, we see it on the news. There are a lot of things we're desensitized to. So I think those paintings are an important part of showing the work that you've done over the past 20 years. And, you know, I'm really curious about what you're painting right now. Like, what's in your studio? What are you working on right now?
Right now, just working on Houston 80s, 90s political scene, music scene, of course. I'll continue to make works about Screw and all of the fallen soldiers from the SUC. But definitely want to focus on like the political period that my dad was involved in, like in the 80s and 90s, and just my experience from seeing that, you know, growing up my entire life, like from the state legislature to
and for people who don't know your dad, can you tell us a little bit about who your dad was and what he meant to Houston?
Sure. My dad was Franco Lee II, county commissioner for roughly 35 years, served in the state legislature for about 3 years prior to that, but took office in 1984. So I was about 5 years old in kindergarten when he took office in Harris County Precinct 1. So at the time, that was a very powerful position. You know, that seat was very powerful. He had jurisdiction over all parks and recreation and sports venues. You know, he was responsible for getting Minute Maid here. He was like landlord over the Astrodome, responsible for Reliant, bringing the Texans here in 2003. You know, he was, you know, it's pretty much nothing could cross his plate, you know, without his stamp of approval. So it was a lot that I saw that, you know, I can definitely regurgitate onto canvas.
Yeah. And you have a painting of your dad, and it's in the first part of the main gallery downstairs. And I intentionally put that painting there with some of your early paintings to just kind of try to understand like what your relationship with your dad was about becoming a painter. Did you become a painter in talk to me about how your dad felt about you painting, and what
he was very nurturing to my artistic abilities early on. Like just, you know, before I could write, or just when I first started being able to hold a crayon, you know, he was pushing me to, you know, keep making stuff. Don't get frustrated. Don't throw anything away. He would pick drawings I trashed out of the trash can and, you know, straighten them out and keep them or give them to his friends. And just some of my first painting sales, of course, were through his friends and network and stuff like that, like early on, like elementary, middle school, and up, and so on, until I like got serious about it in 2003. But the whole time through, he was very nurturing to what I wanted to do. Whatever it was at the time, I may have like had aspirations to be a doctor or whatnot, and he would be like, okay, you want to go to the morgue, Harris County morgue, and see what that's about? And I was like, nah, I'm gonna stick to art. So yeah, just the whole time, he was you know, getting canvases stretched for me, just anything I needed, you know.
Yeah. That's pretty encouraging.
Yeah.
And it's ironic that you end up making paintings of morgue scenes in your paintings.
Right. Yeah.
But you didn't become a doctor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, those are some of the things that I've been curious about your work. And I want to take this opportunity to open up the discussion for any questions that anyone in the audience has about El Franco's work. But before we do that, I just want to say thank you, really. Thanks a lot for making the time for this conversation, and thank you for being here.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Do you have a question, John?
No, I'm just a functional brother who is holding the mic
Thank you.
for questions. Yeah, then I will have a question. So I think you might, as somebody who knew your dad,
Yes, sir.
and did things and knowing his influence, can you talk a little bit about, you come from art is something, but you also come from a family that's science-based. Can you talk a little bit about, part of the respect for your art came from a person who was definitely into science.
Absolutely. I appreciate you bringing that up. Yeah, and I did want to mention my dad had a love for drawing and watercolor, being that he was engineer and architecture based. He graduated from TSU, started an architectural engineering company called ESPA, which was originally West Houston based, but moved to Third Ward off of OST for many years. And I worked there as well, like from 97 to 2014. So I have a serious background as well with architectural, AutoCAD, and engineering, but that I would have to say played a major part as well. And
Yeah, I was going to say, because the atmosphere at ESPA was a creative atmosphere.
Absolutely.
It was a scientific place, but it was a creative atmosphere. Questions?
Yeah, I've been in your studio, so I don't know what your work looks like in process. I'm curious, do you draw everything out on the canvas and then paint? How do the things evolve? How do they start, and what stages do they go through?
Originally, I did, like when I was speaking about the coloring book stage. Definitely, I was pencil, pen, color pencil, marker on canvas. Then put the paint on top of that, then keep outlining, keep painting. So that was like the early work, was definitely a lot of drawing on canvas. Later on, as I got more confident in mixing colors, now I can just go straight to the image that's in my head. It's all in my head, even if I'm drawing it, but I can just go straight to the image with the brush and the paint.
It blows my mind right now. You're such a good visualizer.
Thank you.
I'm not.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Other questions?
How you doing, man?
Good.
Question I have, so with music-related art pieces that you have, which one would you say, with those like 20 years of work, which one would you say is like your most proudest piece of like a music-related art piece?
It's gonna have to be
This one, right?
DJ Screw in Heaven 2. Prior to that, the first one, DJ Screw in Heaven, just as far as the feedback and circulation has gotten in the museum showings, and just people borrowing it on social media before I got on social media myself, just seeing it make its rounds and just do its own thing is pretty inspiring to see, and just keeps me going.
Yeah.
Great question. I appreciate it.
There's a question up there.
Go.
First of all, thank you so much for coming and speaking.
Thanks a lot.
But my question is about DJ Screw and like the SUC. where did your interest begin with that? Did you have a cousin, an uncle that sort of introduced you to like the gray tapes? How did that sort of come?
Yes, definitely a cousin.
Oh, careful, John.
I'm good.
Mooch, we call him Mooch. It's Harold Dutton Senior's son. He was the first guy I know that was like, oh, he's friends with Screw. Okay, all right, all right. And you know, he let me know you don't want to do that, man. It's you if you you're gonna be uncomfortable sitting in there all night. You don't want to go. But I, you know, that didn't discourage me. I still wanted to get over there, buy some Screw tapes. Friends that I've grown up with, whether from middle school, elementary, people I knew around the city, you know, just too many people that were friends with Screw that I know. And, you know, kind of, it was no way to avoid wanting to buy his tapes and music. I mean, at the time, I had no interest in the radio. I had no interest in other rap artists, what they were doing outside of Houston. It was just like whatever Screw was putting his hands on, that's all we cared about. And I'd say it was like that from 1993 all the way up, you know. But eventually being able to run into these people, go to Screw's house, buy tapes, meet Screw, talk to Screw, go to the shop when it first opened. I just feel like I was at the right place at the right time and was able to, you know, just harness all of that energy and you know, wisdom that Screw was putting into the music scene, and you know, just regurgitate that in the art. And when I'm painting, sometimes I feel like a DJ or something like yourself. She's a hell of a DJ. So, you know, I feel like I'm in the lab just like a DJ would, and kind of have that same drive that Screw would have, you know, putting out a tape. You know, each one of these paintings has a name, just like each one of his tapes had a specific name, and he was composing the mood that he wanted to convey to, you know, whoever he was making the tape for, or you know, or whether he was making the tape for himself. You know, there was a mood for each one of those tapes, and
Yeah.
I wanted to do the same thing with, you know, the painting medium. I appreciate the question.
Other questions? One in the back?
First of all, thank you so much. I just had like two quick questions. One, like, is there other art that you're really excited about today that you think we should be paying attention to? Things you're reading, things you're looking at, things you're listening to that we should, just your recommendations on tastes. And the other question I have, and please feel free to just like brush it aside if it doesn't mean anything, but like looking at your paintings, there's a really luminous quality, an uncanny luminous quality to the way that you reproduce brands and logo names, the way, and sometimes the way that they're often at the center of a painting, but maybe not necessarily the biggest thing. I was wondering if there was something more to say about that, if we could talk about that a little bit more, if there's something there.
Well, to answer the second question, the pop culture aspect of what draws people into contemporary artwork is what I'm normally going for when creating those texts and those fonts and logos and things of that nature. Just trying to use anything to pull someone's interest in, whether it be through nostalgia or through just the subconscious, you know, seeing something that draws them in. But as far as currently what I would want people to focus on, or something that's interested me currently that I could recommend. It's too much stuff. It's just too much. You know, it's information overload. It's just too much stuff. Yeah, yeah. I can't focus on one thing, you know, even while I'm painting, unless I have to. So there's nothing specific that I can recommend to anybody as far as art. just keep your eye open for what I have coming.
Any, yes. Hold on, I gotta do this. Take it.
I'm interested in your work in catharsis. And, Christopher really emphasized the violence in a lot of the work. As you've gotten older,
Mm-hmm.
and you probably don't qualify as middle-aged yet,
No,
but
I do.
do you find in the 20 years that you've been working that the way you work, what you bring to making paintings, what you're getting out of making paintings, has that evolved at all?
Yes, I think it's evolved, but when working from a list, I have to check off and mark off like what I intended to do, but I'm not, I can't keep up with my ideas. I can't produce as fast as my ideas for paintings come out. So I definitely have some paintings in mind or stuff that's in progress that's ahead of what I can present to the public right now. But I think the stuff that's coming has evolved from where I started for sure. That's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have, I'm sorry, is there another question? Please, go ahead.
No, but technically, he used the mic.
Thanks for coming out and having
Thank
this
you.
conversation. I think your work is extremely important.
Thank you.
It amplifies the voices of young Black people who are living primarily in urban environments, inner city environments, the music, the culture, and it's deeply embedded with a lot of cultural meaning, which I won't go into because you already know. But what I do want to ask you is about the absence of the presence of Black women in the work that I see or have seen. What is that about? And also, so why? Why don't I see more women, Black women depicted in your work?
Good question. Good question. My paintings, I feel like I don't make women as attractive as I could. I don't know. They're not as, when I paint women, it could be a lot more added, they're in some of my work, but I don't know. I don't see women doing all of this stuff, in the paintings as far as like drugs, fighting. And so, I mean, it just plays off of like my interest as far as like action scenes and sports, so I'll do better.
I mean, I think it's
No,
Right.
Are they on your list?
well, if I might, because this is a conversation that's been going on now for some time, and I was just having it with some artists actually in Paris, and the real is that if you go into some determined, and I've got two questions that I wanted to ask, but real, if you go into the period of time, actually, there were a few women there. If you go look at the Panthers at the beginning, there were few women there. They were there, but they weren't there. And that story, I think that we're in conversation about now. That story, I think that omission is something that Black women artists are taking to task. They're filling up that gap. The sense of we were there too. But I know that as someone who was deeply involved in the movement in multiple places around the country, this is what the front of it looked like. You'd have
And my response to you would be that Franco his work has depicted the stories that have been captured or widely known to the public. And so, again, women were in the characters, my mother was in the characters.
Exactly. Absolutely. Right.
And so on. But, telling this story, telling these stories, the untold stories, which is what you do, right?
Yes.
I was just curious.
And I think to just finish up the conversation this is a conversation that's been going on, and I think that, and I don't know, conversationally, I do think that this is one of those things where that story is actually better told, as it is being told by women who were there too. It's an ongoing conversation.
Yeah. You say you had a question, John?
I have two questions.
Okay.
One is, can you talk a little bit, it's ironic that we just had this conversation, but one is, can you talk about community, especially that DJ Screw created, especially that's all in this. That's the first one. And then the second one is, with all of the work that you've seen and you've gone through your studio, all the work that you've done, how do you respond to when you walk in here and see this representation of your work? That this is what the public is getting to see as an introduction to all of what you do, because there's tons of work that you have. What was your impression walking in to the finalization of this show? So those are the two questions.
I felt like I reached the pinnacle when walking into this exhibition. Like, I never thought I would have the opportunity to fill up like 4 gallery spaces. No, it's, I think it's the beginning of like.
We hope so.
The second chapter.
Yeah, the second chapter.
What about community?
Well, as far as community and dealing with what Screw cultivated, I was just listening to an interview where Zero was talking about how when Screw was around, there could be people that had beef, and they would not dare, entertain any of that beef when they were in the presence of Screw. So like, that goes a long way. I mean, he brought together so many sides of town. I'm from Fifth Ward area. I'd be going over there with my Fifth Ward shirts on, and he would be like, "Let me see your shirt." And I'll show him the shirt. He's like, "Oh, that's Player. I like that." He was just a real gentle, respectable guy that tied the whole city together. With that being said, you can kind of just see what the death, well, from Screw's death to Fat Pat's death to Hawk's death, I think it just brought people even closer as far as wanting to commemorate what, their whole crew was about. And, still to this day, if you see somebody with a Screw shirt or something like that, you're going to feel like you need to conversate with that person or whatnot. So it's that serious and in tune with, the city and the camaraderie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're going to leave it there. Thank you again for coming. And want to plug those 2 reminders that our next exhibition is September 16th, and the artist's name is Johnny Floyd. There will be a reception here from 6 to 8 p.m. And if you haven't already, I would really encourage you to follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and bookmark our website, www.hmaac.org. That's where you'll find the most up-to-date information on our social media and on our website. And I also want to strongly encourage you to become members of the museum. It's a way of supporting exhibitions like the one you're in right now, and just sort of expanding your interaction with contemporary art. We change the exhibitions 4 times a year, and there's always something here. you know, it's like Texas weather. If you don't like one exhibition, come back for the next one and we'll re-embrace you. So thank you again for coming, and thank you.
Thanks a lot.